for me, my thing was, it wasn't just, I don't want to teach them wrong, but I didn't want to give a wrong reputation of my king again.
To Walk Like a Hebrew, the podcast that exists to tell the stories of people who leveled up in the faith and how they got from there, wherever that was, to here, living the Torah pursuant life. I'm Jody Odell. We call ourselves Torah pursuant because we are pursuing the perfection of our faith, and because it's impossible to be Torah observant in this day and age, because, as my dear friend pointed out to me, there is no temple standing, and therefore the Torah cannot be observed properly. If you've got a different opinion, please let me know through the contact page at sheholdsforth.com. This is episode 11, part 2 of my amazing discussion with Alisha Stubbs of Provo, Utah. We'll pick it up just before where we left off last week.
I had questions only probably because, I don't want to negate the Ruach HaKodesh because obviously that's the true leader in all of this. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of like I'd been shown the treasure and then moved away from the treasure, where a lot of people were like, I think there's a treasure here somewhere. So
right.
I don't know. I think that says a lot about us, and just as believers, the patience that we need to have with each other. So,
and a lot of people are shown the treasure. They are taken to the treasure and they look at it and they say, I don't want that treasure.
Yeah. I don't understand that, but this is true.
I don't either, but I've experienced it myself so many times. And, I've said this before, but I believe that the Ruach HaKodesh opens people's eyes in his time, that we cannot make somebody else see.
Right.
That it's the person has to be operating in the Spirit
so much
before their eyes will be opened.
Right.
And, that's not an easy place to come to. It can be very difficult for a lot of people. And especially when your paradigm is shaken so fundamentally,
right?
Especially if you've been a teacher.
Yeah.
If you've been a teacher in the church, if you've taught people's children, that was my personal
mine
experience.
Too. Yeah.
Teaching other people's children, the guilt that I had for having taught incorrectly for so many years. It has really been a very, very humbling experience. And I'm a little bit terrified, honestly.
Mm-hmm. I do. I that was actually, I think, one of the very hard things of, as you begin this walk. As a mom, I'm the weird mom who's always making a lesson for the kids. And
oh no, I'm the same
way.
way.
And we did, so our kids never believed in Santa Claus. We never celebrated Halloween. We were like, we're not doing those worldly things. We're just going to have a happy birthday Jesus party on Christmas. Like that was our mindset. And and I was always creating these big lessons for the kids to participate in that was going to just submerge them into the word. And suddenly I felt like everything that I knew was in question. There was two things that I understood coming out of this and that I've never let go of, and I didn't even let go of then. And that was that I understand unabashedly this God that I understand, this biblical God that I get, he is the creator, period, end of sentence. There's no question about that in my mind.
Yes.
And that at the time I would have said Jesus, that Yeshua is the Messiah. He is the word of God come in the flesh. How that happens, I don't know. I'm going to even question how that even happens. I don't know. But those are the two things I understand, mostly because I had Brad as a teacher who you cannot sit under Brad and not understand that there is a creator, period.
Yes.
And so I had that foundation, but everything else I felt was stripped out from underneath me. These two things I understand. I don't even know anything else. And so now as a mom who's, created Bible study lessons, and I feel like I'm afraid to teach now because I'm afraid I'm going to teach you the wrong thing until I can figure this out. And so it was funny because as I started creating we started going through the parashah. And so as I started creating, little Bible study, kid Bible studies based on the parashah for my kids, it was like I was relearning. So.
It is. It's a little bit terrifying, especially in light of the scripture in the book of James that says teachers will be held to a higher standard.
Yep.
Because they should know better because they're teachers. And
Absolutely.
so I've I don't know about you, but the first couple of years that I was in this walk, I refrained from talking about it to anybody because I wouldn't say terrified, but I was just cautious. I did not want to mislead someone because I didn't yet know the right answer myself.
Right.
And so I waited until I had been doing this long enough that I understood why the New Testament says these things, and it seems to say this thing that we grew up believing, but in the reality, it does not. And I had to be able to explain that fully before I was able to go out and tell anybody about it.
Right.
You know?
And I think too, because when you've been a person who has been in some sort of authority within a group, and then suddenly you're breaking off from that, then there are going to be a lot of questions, and you want to be able to give a right answer. Because for me, my thing was, it wasn't just, I don't want to teach them wrong, but I didn't want to give a wrong reputation of my king again. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like that was
makes
part of it.
perfect sense. Yes, I absolutely understand.
Yeah.
That's huge. Wow.
That was, for me, it was almost like I'd been giving a disservice to you. I mean, my heart was genuine towards only wanting to teach the truth, and I know that. But regardless, you can like genuinely drink poison. So,
yes, exactly.
Or pour it out in a glass of lemonade to somebody else.
And yet we will still be called to account for misrepresenting the true nature of the Word of God.
Exactly.
So just real quick, can you just tell me some of the specific ways that this walk has changed your day-to-day life? I mean, the obvious one would be now you keep the Sabbath, right? Now you keep the holidays. Are there other things that are part of this walk that maybe weren't part of a mainstream Christian lifestyle that you felt like you needed to change?
It's so funny because I've been doing this now for so long. I don't even, it's so... Everything outside of it is so foreign to me. And it's so foreign to me when that's not what people do. It's weird.
I'm getting to that point too.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you would have asked me this, I mean, this is 97 and this is 2020. So, I mean,
97, that's 23 years ago.
So so it's really hard for me to actually even think back to then because now it's just so everything. I guess the first thing is obviously, so one of my dearest friends now has just started keeping Shabbat, has just started keeping the feasts. And so it's funny looking at everything through her eyes. She's always so amazed. Like right now, 2 weeks ago, I was like, because I own my own business, right? So I get to structure everything. And I'm thinking quarterly. I'm thinking, so we're going into, and I know Passover is going to be around this time. And so I'm already structuring everything leading up to that because it's become such a way of my life so that then I have this time off to do these things, right? And I just mentioned it in passing to her and she just started laughing. She's like, I cannot wait until I'm so used to this that I'm already thinking about that in January. Because this was like right at the end of January when I was saying this. And so I guess that's the thing is like in reality, it so then becomes everything of the way you live. I don't even think about it anymore. But that is one of the things. I mean, like literally when it comes down to it, my entire life is set up around the cycles of Yahweh. So it's set up around what Shabbat is. It's set up around what the feasts are. It's like there's a business conference and I'm like, that's probably going to be really close to Shavuot or to Sukkot. So I'm not going to buy tickets to that because it very well could be right at Sukkot. And that's like literally that we haven't even started the spring feast yet, So everything, I think that's the very first thing is that everything starts to be in the rhythm of his cycles.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then because of that, everything else starts to just become in sync with that. Does that make sense? So
yeah, makes absolutely perfect sense. Yes.
It's like you do all those things, but the reality is it becomes the rhythm of your life. And so it's hard for me to look back and say, I mean, I own my own business, so I've never had a problem with bosses. When in the point I had mentioned my ex-husband, the point we were going through a divorce, I went back into corporate America, did the thing I did for my own business in corporate America. And I just let him know in the interview, I don't work Sabbath. So if you require that, you can't hire me. And I was in an executive position, but I was running sales teams for a radio station. And you have on air, like a huge thing is, you take your radio station, they do a setup at the store on Saturday. And you know what I mean? Like that's a huge promo thing. And if they were my clients, that would be something I would be required to do. And I just let them know I was not going to do that. And that was understood from the very beginning of them hiring me.
And they hired you anyway.
They hired me anyways. I just always felt like I never wanted that to be an issue. And if they didn't want to hire me for that, I was never going to feel like I could always go back and say, when we had the interview, I let you know this is going to be an issue, and there was never a problem with it. Never at all. So I've always had that.
We're experiencing that too, Helena and I, my youngest daughter, when she's looking for work, that's the first thing that she tells them. It's the first thing I tell them. And honestly, I feel in some cases, employers are terrified of a religious discrimination lawsuit.
Right.
And so they are very quick to say, okay, we will take care of it, because that's a really big thing right now in the world.
It is. So. It is. And even so, I guess the thing is, I always felt like, look, here's the deal. If you know that I'm the person who's going to tell you this outright and not hide anything from you, you're hiring somebody really honest. So if that doesn't go very far with you, then I don't want to work for you anyway.
Exactly.
I've always been blessed in that regard, that's never been anything that I personally have had to worry about compromising. His cycles become your rhythm. And then it's so weird. I'm like, I don't know. What would it be like if I didn't do these things? What are you all doing out there? I don't know what you're doing out there. So.
Yeah. I'm starting to lose my memories of how life was before, because this is, it's so practical and day to day and hands on. It's not like, I don't know, gosh, I'm just going to make a fool of myself here. But in the mainstream church, a lot of the things that we did they seemed very contrived. You know what I mean? But the feasts of Jehovah they're more in tune with the cycles of the planet, with the seasons. And Torah is really about doing. It's a doing. You cannot keep Torah without doing the things that are in it. And that really brought home to me the whole, be doers of the word and not hearers only. Doing the feasts year after year after year really makes the scriptures make sense. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, because you understand what's happening during these seasons, like in Yeshua's life and his ministry and things that were going on. And suddenly you say, oh, well, that happened during the Feast of Sukkot. And that was on Shavuot. And these are the things that were happening. And it just makes more sense.
Yeah, I just can't. I guess I just can't imagine it not being this way anymore. So it's hard for me to think of the things that are different now. Other than, just the things that we all think about. And the things that we, if you're keeping Torah, the things that you do and how that becomes something different.
So what do you call yourself when someone asks you about your religion?
This will sound weird, but it's really dependent on who I'm talking to.
Oh, that's not weird at all. No, really, it's not. That's the answer I get from pretty much everybody.
Really? I didn't know that. So that's good. That's good. It really is dependent on who I'm talking to. I mean, the very easiest thing to say, if all I'm doing is trying to explain myself to somebody who I don't want to go into everything with, right? Is just to say I follow Messianic Judaism. Like that's the easiest thing to say because people understand, well, for the most part, Judaism. And when you say Messianic, then they're, what is that? And it might lead a question. And then I'll be like, yeah, I follow the things of the Old Testament that you think of as Jewish, but I believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So with clients of mine, that usually is a very quick introduction because I take time off that doesn't make any sense to them, right? Because I celebrate the and so it's a really beautiful way for me to witness to them about why I do the things that I do. The one thing though, and the reason that I'm, it depends on who it is. Like it's just in passing, like for example, the job interview situation, that's the easiest way to explain myself in a setting that means that I have boundaries you don't have. And that's all we need to go into. Right. So in that kind of setting is when I would say that. I do not call myself a Messianic Jew because I'm not, but that is the easiest way for me to explain to you what I'm doing. And you probably have some idea of what that may and, what that might look like. As far as if I am talking to somebody like, a person who's become a friend of mine, they're like, okay, I'm so confused. Alisha, what is it you do? What are you? My answer is I'm a child of God. That's like my answer. Because that is, and of course I use that vernacular with people who aren't in these circles, because if I said I'm a child of, they'd be like, what is that? You follow some weird cult, But a long time ago, way back when we were first keeping the feast. And really, this was when we were trying to first sort out, like, what in the heck are we now? Like, it was weird, like, we now need this label thing, because we were used to having this label of, like, we're Pentecostal, we're this, we're that. And our neighbors next door, we had just bought this new home and we were moving in, and our fences were short enough for some weird reason that they could see into our backyard. And we barely knew them yet, right? We hadn't lived there for too long. And I'm out on our back deck building a little sukkah. And, my neighbor, I know she's Christian. She's like, she leans over the fence. She's like, what are you doing? And I go to tell her, and she's like, "Oh, well, I don't understand. What do you guys believe? What are you?" And I want to say, just the standard, "Oh, we follow Messianic Judaism," just to be done with it. And Yahweh was like, "Don't you do that. Don't do that." And it was because, here's the thing. If I say I follow this thing called Messianic Judaism, whether I'm Jewish born or Gentile or not, regardless, if I say that to a believer, then I'm doing the thing that I would do. I'm not doing anything that creates curiosity. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes.
There's, of course you are doing that thing because that's the thing that the Jews do. And I'm not a Jew, so it has nothing to do with me.
Right.
So as I went to say that to her, that's where Yahweh corrected me, was like, no. Don't give yourself that label, not because it was wrong to have the label, but in the sense that I've now just shut the door on any further conversation, because now I'm just doing those, those are really neat little Jewish things you're doing, versus these are actually things that you have a heritage in too, if you only knew. So that's one of the reasons that I'm always very who am I talking to? How does this need to be presented? So.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So last question, share with our listeners your top 3 favorite resources. Your go-to resources, just off the top of your head.
Obviously, Brad and Wildbranch. Obviously, I mean that's a given. I adore Brad and Carol, and I just have to say, there's not 2 more amazing people just to sit down and break bread with. They are amazing teachers, and just amazing. I also love Tony Robinson.
Oh, yes. Restoration of Torah Ministries.
I love his stuff. When my kids were little, I used to print off the child's version of the Parsha studies that they would produce way back then. And he and Brad are both on the Hebraic Roots TV.
Yeah, HRN.
HRN.
Hebrew Roots Network.
That's right. Yeah. But way back, long before HRN was ever around, I think he's a phenomenal teacher. I really love the way he teaches, because I think he teaches it so simplistic, very deep things that I learned from Brad a long time ago, but he teaches it it's very easy to follow. He's such a good teacher. And then I mentioned before, I have a bookcase full of over $1,000 worth of resources that Brad and Carol had given me. And that's because, Brad taught me way from the beginning of how to dig in the word, and how to go to the root, and how to trace it out through scripture, and how to take a Greek word into Hebrew and Hebrew word into Greek, all those things. And you used to have all the books Brad and Carol gave me, but you don't really have to so much anymore. And I really think that every believer really needs to get very comfortable with the resource Blue Letter Bible.
Yes, I was just going to say, not if you have the Blue Letter Bible app. You don't need those books anymore. It's always in your hand.
It's amazing. Yeah. And it used to be, they had, of course, the Strongs and stuff, but now pretty much anything I could do with those resources, I can do on the app.
Yeah. And it's so fast.
Yep. And it's so fast. It's amazing. There are things that I still have to pull all those out for. And I'm a geek, so I like to pull them all out anyways. There's something about being in the book and having a bazillion of them laying out on your bed, and you just feel like you're really digging.
I love that.
So those would definitely be my favorite resources. If one was to say, how could I really begin? Those would be 3 places I would say would be a good place to begin.
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Alisha, for taking the time to sit down with me. And I really appreciate it. I appreciate your story and your time. Thank you for listening to Walk Like a Hebrew. Be sure to follow us on social media and stop by the website at sheholdsforth.com, where you can make a donation, read some fascinating stuff, get show notes, and more. Many thanks again to Jack Lane for the music. May Yahovah bless you. We'll catch you next time.